Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. This presentation will be about an hour for those that are asking. And like Lindsay said, if anyone has any questions, please don't hesitate to put them in to the chat, and I will try to get to them as we go. And if there's anything at the end, I will do my best to be able to answer everything then. Okay, let's get started. So hopefully for the goals that we want to be able to reach during this session is that to be able to empower parents with the knowledge and tools to support the children who have an IPP, explore really the purpose and the structure of an IPP at a very general sort of space, and also be able to guide and help you guys advocate as parents what your child's needs are and what they could receive. And then also some practical strategies for support sort of at learning at home and being able to transfer that to school. So to start off, what is an IPP? So as a general sort of rule or as a general definition, a formal document that outlines specific educational goals and strategies for students with special needs, with learning needs. They are often developed collaboratively by parents or educators, other professionals within the school setting, and an IPP is to be serving as a working document. So it is meant to evolve and change as the needs of your student and your child change, and as we'll look at and talk about as the presentation goes on, really for it to be a fluid document. Purpose of an IPP is really to help primarily to support those students with diverse learning needs, to be able to have an opportunity for your child or for the student to have that level playing field and ensure that education and learning is an equitable experience for them, that they can reach their full potential and that they can enjoy learning, because sometimes when you have a learning difference, it's hard. It's hard to be a student when you're feeling like you're kind of always behind. So I use the word or the acronym IPP, the Individualized Learning Program Plan, sorry. Sometimes it is also referred to as an IEP, an ISP, an LMNOP kind of thing. There's lots of sort of acronyms for it. It's all really the same thing depending on what school board or division your child and you are part of. But they're really all the same kind of format. They point on the same things. They are meant to give the same purpose. They might just have a different name. So I'm going to use the acronym of IPP, but if your school board uses a different one, I'm talking about the same thing. So there's mostly and mainly three main components or key components to an IPP. The first one is really wanting to help identify and those strengths and those needs that student needs to have sort of supported. The second part is looking at setting some goals, and those can be educational, social emotional, they can be something that you want to work on as a team. And then the last part is implementing the strategies to be able to help support those goals and help strengthen those needs. So when we look at that, let's kind of look at it through the process of what steps we would take. So there's kind of five main ones that I've broken it into, and we're going to start with looking at through the assessment phase. So during this step, we really want to try to gather that information about what the student's strengths, their needs, their learning preferences, all of that information that helps us understand how your child learns and how they are able to be successful within their school setting. Maybe we would talk to the teachers, professionals, other people in the school, maybe a psychologist if you've had one, or like if you've had an assessment, things like a psychoeducational, maybe a social emotional, those assessments. And that information is really important to help gather all of the information we can in order to help make the best IPP and that best kind of working document to be able to help support the success of your child at school. The process, however, for an IPP can be started by whomever. So it doesn't necessarily have to be initiated by the school. The parent could also be the one that says, we've had some, excuse me, we've had some testing done for our child. We've recently learned that they have ADHD, and we would like to have an IPP implemented at school. That would be a really good example of having a parent implement and have an sort of advocate to have this started. The teachers or the school might also be the ones on the other side saying, we're noticing that your child is struggling with this, this, and this, and we would like to also have the opportunity to look at implementing an IPP. Do you have access to getting a psychoeducational assessment done? Maybe sometimes the schools are able to offer that, not often because they are quite limited in how many assessments they can do throughout the year. But if they are able to, or if you're able to, that assessment and that information would then be utilized into making their IPP. Then we want to try to collaborate. So all of those people who are invested in your child, that team of individuals would all work together and be able to sort of look at what types of things that do we need to look at to be able to create a comprehensive plan and really almost like a map for success of what reflects those students' needs and goals. But looking at the team of people you would have, that can be involving anyone that you think is important for your child. If there is support staff, if there are maybe therapists, such as speech therapist or occupational therapy that you do outside of the school, any of those people should be part of the conversation, or at least being able to give some feedback about what they think might be successful accommodations or strategies for success for your child. But always remember that you are essential, because as a parent, you know your child the best, and you are able to provide insights and advocate for your child's needs like no one else can, especially when it comes to setting goals. So being able to have the opportunity to set really just measurable objectives, goals that you can actually achieve, because we don't want the student to be working towards something that, you know, the carrot is always kind of one step away. We want them to be able to actually reach their goals in an IPP so that there's success and celebration around that success, so that when they can reach that goal, because it is measurable and specific and achievable, they can feel really good about what they've been able to do. And because, like I said, that the IPP should be fluid in a working document, those goals should be attainable and achievable well within a year. It should be every month or every couple of months, or even for sometimes, if it has to be, it should be every couple of weeks if there's something that's small enough that they should be trying to work towards. It can be that specific if it needs to be. And so an acronym that just kind of helps is having a SMART goal. So specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. And like I said, we don't want that carrot kind of always being pushed further away. We want them to be able to have an opportunity to have a goal that they see, they understand, the team around them all understands the same goal, and they can see that that goal is actually achievable within a relevant and an appropriate amount of time. Implementing. So this is the hard part. I think that people sometimes don't understand, or that they struggle with, and certainly a lot of the questions that I get is, how do we actually make this work? And how do we actually make this start? And how do we actually make this continue to work? So a lot of that is just, they should be outlined in the IPP. Having those accommodations and those specific strategies for support should be outlined. There should be a list of things that my child or my student or this student can have additional time for writing tasks. That's a universal accommodation now. Everybody kind of gets extra time, but maybe attached with that is that your student also needs to have a special writing spot. So they need to be able to go into a quiet space so that they don't sit in class and hear the ticking of the HVAC coming on, or they can hear the person mowing the lawn outside and that's all they focus on. That doesn't give them a level playing field. That makes it so that for those students with ADHD, it's really hard to focus when you see all the other things that are keeping your attention on other than what you're actually supposed to be paying attention to. So giving them that level playing field of having the opportunity to go to a classroom, a different writing space. Most schools have a specialized learning center that the students can go to. It's just that not everybody knows that they can actually use it, and not all the staff know that that young person maybe needs it, or that it's part of their IPP, which is part of that implementation, is having you as the advocate, your child is also the advocate, but also the staff being aware that your child is even on an IPP, needs to be on an IPP or has maybe recently started with being on an IPP, and having that regular kind of conversation and communication open of really communicating and advocating about letting people know this is what's going on, this is what's happened, this is the new document. Do you know about it? Can we get someone to pass it to you? Have you followed up on it? Have you read it? Have you noted that we've done some changes? It seems sometimes that we have to, as the parents, maybe be more so involved than maybe we feel that we should at times, but sometimes also that your child might be new to some of the teachers and they don't know them, or you're new to a school and so you're having to start over again. It's a lot. It's a big journey, but once you do get those teachers on board and the school is aware of what some of those IPP accommodations are, it really does end up being a successful experience for everyone, because then the teacher is also not wondering and worrying about why maybe your child isn't being successful in their class. Coming up with an action plan. So, really utilizing those varieties of supports, looking at those different types of teaching methods, different types of ways that the teacher can implement accommodations. Maybe you have a diversity learning teacher at your school, or that it is the responsibility of the resource teacher. Whoever it is, being able to utilize their strengths of advocating within the building, but then also having that action plan be put into place of how do we then now tell all the teachers that there's certain things in place? How do we make that action plan get into action within the classrooms? And then making sure that all parties understand their roles and their responsibilities. Part of that also comes with creating environments that are structured and consistent. So having things like having in class ones, like I mentioned, with having maybe a different quiet workspace to be able to work in, or maybe when with some of the class for some of our younger students, if the rest of the class is in one part of the class, maybe a few students that need that extra little bit of quiet space come to the other side of the class and they work with, a different teacher, or if they're on their own, or if they have the a support staff working with them. Sometimes it just is that they need to be away from the big part of the classroom and they just need a little bit of space. It's not that you're trying to isolate them or segregate them. It's just that it helps them stay focused and maybe feel more confident in being able to keep up. Little things can make a difference too. Things like being able to have their notes be given to them before having to look at a PowerPoint. Instead of having to look at the screen, write all your information, look down, look up, pay attention, maybe just getting a printout of the screen of the notes beforehand, or using assistive technology. So being able to have an iPad that has the PowerPoint on it so that they can be looking there instead of trying to look up and down and notes. And maybe on the iPad, they can be writing notes along it at the same time. There's Technology has come a long way in the last few years, and there's lots of really cool things that different programs can be able to implement. And having those things in place is important because it also has to be written on their IPP, because cell phones and technology isn't just allowed in the classrooms, but it is allowed if it's part of your IPP and it helps you level the playing field and helps you be able to be a good learner. And so having those supports, especially for students, if any parents here are a student of a high school, or parents, sorry, of a high school student, having those accommodations put in place so that it can transition to post-secondary is also really important. Having those things be relevant and current when they graduate allows that active and current IPP to be transferred over to university. And those accommodations can get carried over to there as well. If you don't have an active IPP, the process is much more complicated and a little bit more time consuming, because the first semester is spent filling out a tremendous amount of forms, doing a lot of sort of catch up and really advocating to then have the implementation of all that stuff get kind of started. But the process is quite clunky. And so having things current and relevant when they graduate is a really huge step towards making it a little less of a stressful transition into post-secondary. Other things that they could do at school to help sort of with accommodations would be things even like visual support, so calendars or a digital agenda, or if maybe your child is one that struggles with keeping track of when things are due or how long does it take to actually do an assignment. They got something given to them on a Tuesday and it's due the following Thursday, and yet you see that your child starts working on like the Wednesday of the next week, and you're like, oh, do you have homework? And we know as parents, we ask that, do you have homework? Do you have homework? Do you have homework? And sometimes the answer is consistent confidently, yeah, but I did it, or no, or it's not due till next week. But then all of a sudden next week happens and they're like, oh my gosh, this is actually like a 5 hour project and I'm starting it at 6 o'clock the night before. Knowing how long things take is a really great tool to be able to put into an IPP. So having the teachers maybe sit with them and say, okay, on our digital calendar or on our little map, or we're going to put something into a Google map or whatever you want to put it into, if this is a project that is this, this, and this, well, actually, maybe it's 2 or 3 steps. So let's separate it. And this is probably going to take you about 2 hours. And this might take you maybe 3 hours because you don't like to read quickly, or you're not a quick reader, or you don't really, the writing is hard for you and it takes you a long time. So here are some other tools to help make that be a little bit easier. So having those kind of extra perks makes things less stressful when it comes to the due dates. And then some of those other sort of ways that we can help things become consistent is even looking at some of those outside resources. So does your child have a counselor outside? Does your child have occupational or speech therapy? Involve them, include them as part of this process. But also we want to make sure that it's really quite structured. So does the speech therapist come into the school? Yes. Okay. Well, do they come every Tuesday? Okay. Well, then let's make sure that everybody knows that the speech therapist comes in every Tuesday to work with your child. So on that Tuesday, when it's the time for the speech therapist, we also don't want them to have to be writing, the rest of the class is writing a test, because now that puts your child again at a disadvantage. And so this really having that open communication and the support around the fact that if we know things are happening, then how do we do our best to make sure that it's structured and consistent and supportive? Because when we can do all those things, what we can do is then be able to monitor and review it so that we can regularly assess your students' progress. Working towards those goals is so important. There's nothing better than seeing a student work really hard at getting something done and achieving it and feeling so proud of themselves for being able to reach that goal. But then knowing that then it's stagnant, then there's not a next step. We want an end then. We want them to be able to work really hard and then be able to be like, I did this, and now I'm really proud of myself. So I also want to be able to achieve the next step. And so having that regular assessment, regular monitoring, regular reviewing to make adjustments to the IPP as needed. And as I mentioned before, the IPP needs to be that working document so that it stays fluid. It stays so that that young person can be feeling motivated and excited about moving on to the next step. So to help sort of know when a good time is to meet with school is most schools kind of pick certain times throughout the year. So again, different boards might be a little different with October, maybe November, maybe January, maybe February, but it's pretty much consistent in the sense that an IPP will be finalized at the end of a school year if they have one already. It'll get printed out, it'll get saved, it'll be ready to go. But then the other part to that is when you start the next school year, the staff will get to know your child, and then usually around the mid-October-ish is when the first IPP writing will happen. So staff will revise the IPP, they'll send it home, and that's when you as a parent gets to review it, see what happened, like see what looks, make sure that everything's relevant and appropriate, and then they would ask you to sign it and send it back. So this is where having those opportunities to have schedule meetings and have that opportunity for feedback and conversation is really important, because if you don't feel that you agree with what's on the IPP, or maybe you're a parent who's like, I didn't know that I could say anything, but you can. That agreement, it is just that. It's an agreement. When you sign that IPP, it's that you're approving what the school has suggested for accommodations, supports, and services for your child. So if you don't think that there's something on there, or that it's missing, or that you would like things to be maybe written a little differently or given a different opportunity, then this is the time for you to write back to the staff and say, this is great. However, I'd also like to have this part added. Or if we could also maybe word this differently, because I don't think that that's, a goal that's going to be attainable within a short amount of time. Maybe we can break that up into steps. That is totally something that parents are able and encouraged to do. Because who better to advocate for their child than you? So there's some things that are important for you to know. Never hesitate to advocate for your child. And sometimes people are like, oh, I don't want to be like that parent, or I don't want to be the squeaky wheel, or I just don't want to like bother the teacher because they're busy. bother the teacher. They're busy, but they want to be able to help your child. They they are equally as upset when your child comes home and says, I'm having a rough time, or when they come to them and say, I don't understand because I just don't get it, or I'm struggling to stay focused in class. Well, that's good information for us to know, but that's also something the teacher wants to be able to help with. And that's why there are people in the school whose job it is to help support the IPPs, diversity learning teachers, resource teachers, guidance departments, guidance counselors. All of those people are there to help support making sure that the IPP is something that helps your child do their best, levels that playing field, and helps make learning easier for them and less stressful for you as the parent and for the teacher in the classroom. You know your child the best. So there are some legal frameworks that you can kind of reference as well. So things like the Inclusion Policy, the Education Act, there's a code of conduct for teachers, and there's also some really great documents on you can look at them through Alberta Education is kind of it's the umbrella to everything. But under that website, you can find lots of documents, lots of information around what an IPP specifically is and what it does to help support your child with their learning. And so an individualized program plan, you can look on CBE, there's ones on CSSD on the Catholic, there's ones through Rocky View. All of the different boards have things as well, but the Education Act under Alberta Education is where you would find a lot of these documents, and they will help you just understand your rights as a parent so that you can help become and be the best communicator that you can for your child's learning process and their journey. Some little tips, just try to really encourage that regular communication. Be that person that's like, I'd like to meet every month, or I'd like to have a check-in via email every 2 weeks. And if that's working well, then increase it to every month. But maybe you just need to have a little check-in. How are things going? Oh, I heard there's a big test coming up. How do we, is there any suggestions for how to study? Oh, I see that they got a really big proposal or they have to do a big project. It's a group one, it's an individual one. Okay, well, what steps are there? Could you just maybe help me understand a little bit more so that I can help my child be able to program plan it a little bit better? There's lots of forms that you can get, templates. I have lots if you want to email me after, of just little mind maps of just things to help them stay focused, or things that help you write an essay. How do you break that up into really manageable chunks? How do you break that up into being, instead of at a one night experience, you can have it be that your child would work on an essay over 3 nights, and they're not stressed out and they're not tired and they don't have sort of that frustration part of having to sit down at the kitchen table and do their homework. They don't mind, because instead of it being a massive task and something so overwhelming, they are like, oh, I can do it because it's only going to take me and I only have to spend a half an hour. But if you spend half an hour for 4 days, that's 2 hours that you didn't have to spend the night before. And those really simple little things that you can put in place help as they get older and into post-secondary and high school as well. The same concepts matter. Just the difference is that once they get a little older, they start to also be like, no, I got it, until they don't got it. And then all of a sudden you have I have teenagers at home, and then I have my 6'4" grade 12 freaking out at the kitchen table because he has something due tomorrow morning, and realizes that he has 3 or 4 hours worth of studying. And like I said before, we've sat down at the table at 7 o'clock the night before, and just sometimes their brains just cannot figure out, and they get so stressed out that all of a sudden they're avoiding, and they just are like, I don't know how to even start, so I don't know how to start. You don't know what you don't know, and so helping them just break things down and take a breath is such good things to be able to have on an IPP, but communicating and back and forth with the teachers to be able to understand how to actually help them out. Being prepared for those meetings, jot your notes down, come into it prepared. You don't look like the parent that's like, well, that's a lot of things. You look like the parent who's like, I care about my child and I want to make sure that their education and how they're learning is working for them. You want to bring those relevant documents, anything that's changed, if they've gotten a med change, if they have recently gotten a new diagnosis, bring that information, because that helps. Being clear and concise, Go in there. We know that parents, you're passionate. When something's happening to to your child, like mama bear, papa bear, grandma bear, all those things come out because you care. And that's never bad, ever. So go in there. It's just a matter of clearly communicate what your concerns are so that you can be their advocate, because maybe that your child isn't able to advocate for themselves because they are so overwhelmed. And ask lots of questions. If you have questions, ask them. You are not expected to understand everything, and you don't know what you don't know. And so asking those questions helps you understand. And sometimes those questions are really good to things to ask because maybe the staff at the school also doesn't know, or they didn't notice, or they don't know that that's a child, or like, sorry, that's a strength that your child has, or a challenge that your child has, because maybe they do a really good job of not showing it when they're stressed out at school. Our kids are really good at hiding when they don't want people to see that they're struggling. And that's really, really hard to watch after the fact when things could have just been implemented to make things easier. Because sometimes things are really confusing for us as parents. There's a lot of terminology, big things that we just don't always understand, multi-tiered systems and different types of regulatory things and differentiated instruction. Those are all words that we're like, yeah, we could probably figure it out. But at the same time, we don't know what we don't know. And so sometimes it becomes really hard to not feel out of the loop, or just that you feel like you need like almost like a map to navigate the process of what's happening, because it just seems so not something that you're aware of. So really feeling out of the loop is understandable. Misunderstandings happen though because we feel out of the loop. And so sometimes we just have to ask those questions and clarify what's happening. Because a big part of that is when we are overwhelmed with what's happening with our own kids and things are becoming stressful, it's hard to not just feel some emotional stress. Get that sort of it's almost like when we are having to work really hard to advocate for our kids all the time, we get, almost like advocacy fatigue, a little bit of fatigue around feeling like we're always asking, or we're always wanting to know how to help or support, or what do we do next. It's okay to feel that way, but asking for those questions and those different things that we can ask for support for, balancing the roles, who can come in, how do we prioritize, how do we, not feel exhausted just by always having to sort of help support them, or, remind them like, don't leave it to the last minute. Like, let's work on things a little bit earlier. There's things that we can do to kind of help break those things down. Whoops, sorry. Little bit of like this quote because it kind of just helps us. It's, quotes are simple and silly sometimes, but it's sometimes just the most simplest things. If you change the way we look at things, the things you look at change. If we look at it as like, I don't have to have all this as a burden, and my child doesn't have to feel upset or frustrated or just overwhelmed or unmotivated, or, all of a sudden they're like, oh, I don't feel well. But they're not feeling like they're feeling fine. They just are stressed out about having to go to school. If we try to figure out a way to make things look different, then maybe that also helps them feel less uh, not wanting to go to school, and avoiding the things that they actually have control over. Knowing that you have someone at school that's excited to see your child is really, really important. And so making sure that you have someone that you can reach out to and that you have as an advocate is the best part. Knowing that that child is having a rough time, for me, it's one of the things that I look forward to. If I know that one of my students was having a hard time, the first thing I would do would be like, hey, so good to see you today. Because I know that yesterday, I wouldn't say this part to them, but I know you didn't come to school yesterday because you're probably just really stressed out and your mom and dad kind of told me little things. But at the end of the day, you know what? I don't need to say all those things to them. I just need to let them know I'm so glad to see you today. Good job for coming to school. Let's go get you set up and to figure out a way to get you kind of caught up a little bit. Taking that time to just personalize things is so important. And then that helps then support things at home, but also smooth things over at school. So some things that you can do at home just to sort of help, maybe consistent routines. And I know I'm probably talking to the choir. You guys all know all these things already, but consistent routines, having that same kind of feel as homework. So having it be at the same place, come home, sit at the same table, come home, try to do homework at the same time. If you can't because of sports and things, all those things, that's okay. But just letting them know that there is a time for them to be able to spend on homework or to spend on working through things that are frustrating them. Having things that get broken into, you know, a different place or things like that, having things be broken down into smaller, manageable chunks, maybe just to sort of help them so that it's not like they have to come home, do their homework, do this, do this, do this. Maybe it's just a matter of like, here's what this calendar says. It's on the fridge, it's on your iPad, it's on wherever, just so that they kind of know what they're getting into when they do get home might help relieve some of the stress. And then, like I said, using resources and tools. The digital world is a pretty cool place. I like my old-fashioned calendar on the fridge as well, because then everybody can see it, because I know my teenagers are in the fridge all the time. But at the same time, I also have things on their phones, and we're all color coordinated, and I have dings that happen a half an hour or 2 hours or a week beforehand so that everybody's on task. Just trying to help everybody stay focused and I have a house of, there's five of us and three out of the five have ADHD. So we have to be really, really creative in making sure that everybody is focused and on task. The notes page on your cell phone. You can do this thing where you collaborate the note. Everybody on that collaborated note is on the same page. They all get the updates. They get a notification about the update. There's nothing better than being able to kind of keep that list of, or like, remember you have homework, or these are the things, or how to help kind of break everything apart. That's a really good one because especially for our older kids, we know their phones are with them all the time. And the other best advocate that they can have is you. You are their best resource, you are their best tool, and you are the person that can help them be able to navigate all these other things the best. Because at the end of the day, you are the one that is going to celebrate their success, and you are the one that's going to be able to advocate for their needs. So, looking at it from early intervention through help, professionals, whatever really works for you is good, but being able to just kind of get there really quickly. If you know that something's kind of your spidey senses are tingling, take them to the doctor, seek out professional help, talk to the school, and the same thing will be vice versa. If the school is also noticing something, then really talk to them about what it is that they're seeing, and that might be able to help you too. Something it might just be something as easy as like they're not eating breakfast and so they're really off task in the morning, and some kids just can't eat breakfast. So then what do you do with that? Well, then drink some water or things like that. Just really, I mean, that certainly water support helps everything, but certain little things just make things a little bit easier for them and for you as well. Just hopefully a little reflection on today was that, you know, you were able to learn a little thing or two about being able to support your child, and this the knowledge and tools that are around being able to empower a parent, maybe the purpose and the structure of an IPP, having that be a little bit more cleared, and how that you can actually be an advocate for your child, knowing that you can provide practical strategies and support, but also being their biggest advocate is just such a great thing to know that you have the power to be. And with that, I don't see any other questions, but if there are, then please don't hesitate to reach out. That's our QR code for our Google review and also our website down there at the bottom. We would welcome any questions you have or any reaching out, and we would yeah, love to be able to help support you if you have any questions. But yeah, thank you so much for coming and listening, and hopefully I was able to clarify some of your questions for you. All of them.